I'm going to say something that Honda fans are not going to like. This Honda Pilot is not the forever running tank that people make it out to be. Yes, it has the J35Z4 3.5 liter V6, which is an indestructible engine. But this SUV also has real problems. Problems that typically show up only after you've bought it and the odometer is past 6 digits. So in this video, I'm not going to give you the marketing version of this vehicle. I'm going to give you the real version. The version that dealership techs and real owners are talking about after the cameras stop rolling. And by the end of this video, you'll know exactly what this Honda Pilot does well and what it doesn't do well. Let's get right into it. You know, up front, this 2013 Pilot is a very clean look for a family SUV. I've always really liked these style Pilots. Honda gave this one that chunky squared off front end, which to me, when I'm sitting in the driver's seat, feels a little bit like a Silverado or more like a truck when I'm driving it. Though this is its own unique front end, I like the style of it. And honestly, as far as wear goes, after 13 years, it's pretty good. There is some wear problems and paint problems that I'll be talking about. A lot of them have been addressed by now, but there will be some weak spots to expect with these. Around the back of the Pilot, you can see the family SUV personality. It's boxy and tall, and it actually works in your favor because that gives you lots of cargo space. The taillights usually hold up well. There are some reports of some of these leaking, but these aren't LED taillights, so should you need to replace them, you don't have to worry about spending $1,000. I prefer these type, to be honest with you. For a 13-year-old vehicle, this is really nice. Now, before I even start with the interior, I gotta remind you guys that this is a 13-year-old vehicle. And I'm looking at the amount of wear this interior has. Overall, we have some obvious wear on the steering wheel. The steering wheel is starting to get a little soft, and you can kind of, a little squishy. You can move it around a little bit. When you think about a decade, the amount of time this has been on the road, I think longevity was definitely in the cards when they built this. The texture that they include on the dashboard, I actually like the type of texture that they include. I'm not aware of any serious dashboard disintegration or cracks or anything that's widespread with these, so that's a big plus. I actually kind of like this gauge design. The needle is like behind a window, and then you have your little information display here, which is small but gives you everything exactly you need, your mileage and which doors are open. Shift it right here, which is not a bad spot for it actually. It leaves a lot of room down here for your hand, lots of storage room for cup holders, and this big center storage here. As big as this interior is actually really simple. They kept it very, very simple, even with the rear AC controls. And you have everything you need here. Now, this screen does not have anything other than just your AM, FM, CD, USB auxiliary. That's nice and all, but I would like to get some modern features with this. If you're looking for something like that, make sure to check the description. The material on the door panel is interesting. In fact, it's kind of like a Rubbermaid plastic, and it feels durable. And you have some wear along the armrest. Power window buttons and mirrors are all standard, and physical parking brake, volume buttons on the steering wheel, your mode button. I really like that they put it here. All that stuff is all in a reasonable place. Visors. This visor obviously needs to be replaced. The center console is smaller than I thought on this one. It looks much bigger than it actually is. And the big reason for that is you have the climate control unit right behind it, so it takes up a significant portion of this. They did make up the space in this big center area where you can put your cup holders and store lots of stuff, so works for me. Sunglass holder here, and then you have your map lights up here. Not bad. The center seat, or center back seat, is pretty comfortable actually. It's very standard, but also very nice. Same materials as the front, but you have more storage options here. I'm liking the choice material that Honda used even more so now, and the reason why is because of the condition 13 years later. You gotta remember the age of this vehicle is the big point of this video here. You have your center vents here and an armrest. I like that. This seat does scoot back and forth, which I also really, really like. The only reason obviously for this would be to accommodate the rear passengers with a little bit more room. Speaking of the third row or rear passengers, yes, you can fit an adult back there, and comfortably too. All the way in the third row, and honestly, this is quite impressive actually. This seat is scooted as far back as it can go, and I have a reasonable amount of leg room back here. This back seat, I can confidently say, is for adults.
The second generation Honda Pilot has only 18 cubic feet of cargo space with all the seats up, which actually isn't that bad. You can see the bags in here. When the seats are folded down, there's obviously far more room, and it has a spare tire. The 2013 Pilot is part of the second generation that ran from 2009 to 2015. It uses Honda's J35Z4 3.5 liter V6. It's a 24 valve single overhead cam iVTEC engine with port fuel injection. It makes 250 horsepower at 5,700 RPM and 253 pound-feet of torque at 4,800 RPM. Compression ratio is 10.5 to 1, and yes, it uses VCM, which stands for Variable Cylinder Management, to save fuel, which we'll talk about later on in the video. The engine is timing belt driven, which is a significant difference from a lot of the other vehicles that were on the channel. It's not timing chain driven. The service interval is about 105,000 miles or 7 years, and when you do it, you typically replace the water pump and tensioner at the same time. It's paired to a 5-speed automatic transmission and comes in either front-wheel drive or Honda's VTM 4 all-wheel drive system. It gets 18 city and 25 highway for front-wheel drive and 17 city, 24 highway for all-wheel drive. Now here's why this matters, especially for this used car review. This isn't a turbocharged engine. It's not a direct injected engine. It's not a hybrid. It doesn't have a CVT transmission. It's a naturally aspirated, port injected V6 that Honda has already been refining for a very long time now and had even been refined before it even went into this generation Honda Pilot. And that matters when you're shopping for a vehicle that's at this age, because at this point the newest one is over a decade old.
This engine is the shining beacon of the Honda Pilot, and that is because it's a very, very, very well-built engine that will last a very long time, and it doesn't have a lot of newer car technology that cause excessive repair bills, except for the VCM, which we will be talking about. Outside of that, it's very stout. It doesn't have a turbocharger. It's not timing chain driven. This is driven by a timing belt. However, the timing belt system is a very reliable system, and just because you have to replace it at 100,000 doesn't mean they just snap at 100,000 miles. But of course, I do recommend to stay on top of your maintenance.
And here's the bigger picture. The J Series V6 family has been around for decades. By the time this exact configuration ran from 09 to 15, it was already a mature design. We've now had well over a decade to see how these engines age, and what we haven't seen are any widespread lower end bearing failures or block cracking issues or lower end recalls like we've seen on some of the newer J Series engines in the industry, which is still developing at this moment. That's pretty important because this is a used SUV, not a lease return or a 3-year crossover or anything that's still covered under a factory warranty. When you're buying something at this age, you want something that's proven.
The J35, however, has stout internals. It's proven, doesn't have a hybrid system or any system that will be extremely expensive to repair once it fails. This is just simple V6 old school technology that I love. So overall, for a used vehicle, this engine has a lot going for it. This is extremely reliable, and besides VCM problems, you can't go wrong. But for all of the positive remarks that I have giveth, I shall take it some away, starting with, yes, you've guessed it, of course, the VCM. VCM stands for Variable Cylinder Management. That basically is a fancy term for some of the cylinders turning off to save fuel while you're driving it. That system can be disabled.
And disabled it should be. I'm going to keep this as simple as possible. VCM, or Variable Cylinder Management, was made to save fuel by shutting off cylinders under light load. On these pilots, it can operate in reduced cylinder modes and then transition back to all 6 cylinders. Owners most commonly complain about oil consumption, fouled spark plugs, misfires, and a vibration or shudder feeling that can happen around the same speeds the vehicle is trying to run with VCM active. On every single enthusiast forum, social media group, you name it, a huge number of people don't like it and they disable it because it creates headaches over time. Some report oil burning severe enough to foul spark plugs and trigger misfires, and in worst cases can become very expensive if the misfires are ignored, with things like damaged catalytic converters. There are lots of VCM muzzler kits on the market to disable it that owners frequently discuss. If you're buying a Honda Pilot at this age, it's smart to verify whether it's been disabled, and more importantly, check for oil consumption history, misfire history, or how the owner cared for it over time.
Other things that can fail on this engine are the engine mounts. That's the next biggest thing that you'll be dealing with, and of course it's also VCM related.
Speaking of engine mounts, these electric engine mounts exist because of VCM. VCM can make the engine feel rougher in reduced cylinder modes, so Honda used active control electric engine mounts on many VCM applications to help counteract that vibration. Owners also complain that mount failures can be very, very frequent and very frustrating.
Also, the VVT solenoid can also leak oil in that area as well. Make sure to monitor that area for oil leaks in general. It's the one area that cannot leak oil because you will be replacing an alternator if you let it go for too long. And if you put a new alternator, the new alternator won't last very long because oil is leaking onto it. It's not designed for that.
The VVT solenoid, also known as the front rocker arm control valve or spool valve, is a documented leak point on these engines. Honda actually issued a service bulletin 20-023 covering the 2009 all the way up to 2015 second generation pilots for oil leaks from that assembly. It's accessible and book time is also under an hour, but if you ignore it, oil can run down the front of the engine and contaminate the alternator. The key point here is that the leak isn't catastrophic, but ignoring it could be expensive. Other things you can run into are basic maintenance items like PCV valves. On higher mileage J series engine, replacing them is just more preventative. It's not a Honda Pilot specific defect, it's just standard Honda maintenance. Another non-widespread issue, but something you'll occasionally see on the 10 to 15-year-old Hondas, is maybe an ABS or VSA warning light. Sometimes it's just this wheel speed sensor, sometimes it's a hub. In less common cases, it could be the ABS module. Not an epidemic on the Pilot, but it does show up in reports across this generation. As far as the timing belt goes, I mentioned it, so I need to discuss this. It's not a flaw, it's maintenance. If you're paying a shop, expect roughly between about $1,000 or maybe $1,500 depending on the region and labor rates, which will typically include the water pump and tensioner. That's just normal ownership costs, so you have to budget for it with this Honda Pilot. For some people, it could be a deal breaker, but for others, it's part of owning a timing belt driven V6. Now for the all-wheel drive model, specifically, Honda issued a service bulletin covering the 2012 to 15 Pilot for vibration between 30 and 65 miles per hour. In some cases, it involves the drive shaft center support bearing, and the repair can require replacement of that shaft. This can easily be confused with VCM vibration or bad engine mount, so if you're test driving an all-wheel drive model, pay close attention at steady highway speeds. Now regarding the transmission, the 5-speed automatic in the 2013 second generation Pilot is generally considered very durable. It doesn't have any widespread internal pattern failure tied to this generation. There was a technical service bulletin addressing a vibration between 30 and 65 miles per hour, and it occurs during torque converter clutch lockup. In many cases, the fix involved a PCM software update to adjust lockup strategy, but that bulletin does not describe any major internal transmission failure. It's just related to torque converter engagement characteristics. That said, this transmission fluid is sensitive to fluid condition. Regular drain and fill service with the correct Honda fluid is pretty important with this one. Neglected fluid can contribute to harsh shifting or shutter complaints, so changing the fluid in this one will be pretty important. But overall, in this second generation Pilot, there's no widespread pattern of catastrophic transmission failure. This 5-speed has a long, solid reputation that can last a very, very long time. There is one more issue related to the transmission that I need to mention, but I want to stress that it's rare. Not common, but destructive. Like many vehicles of this era, the transmission cooler is integrated into the radiator. If that internal cooler fails, coolant and transmission fluid can mix. When that happens, it gets ugly. Again, it's not common on the Pilot, but if you're looking at a high mileage example, checking the transmission fluid condition and the coolant level is going to be necessary. Regarding the air conditioning system, there was not a massive recall situation for the Pilot, but Honda products from this era did have intermittent air conditioning complaints. For this, it's usually the clutch air gap, not the compressor itself, but the compressor could fail. It's not guaranteed though, and it's not rampant with these. If the cooling cuts in and out or you hear some compressor noise, don't ignore it, because if a compressor fails internally and sends debris through the system, the repair can escalate pretty quickly into replacing the entire system. Again, not a Honda Pilot epidemic, just something to pay attention to. The suspension is pretty conventional. The only thing that stands out, and probably the #1 owner complaint, is the front lower control arm compliance bushings. They wear, that's really what it comes down to. If you start hearing clunks over bumps or feel it wandering while you're braking or notice uneven tire wear, the compliance bushings should be high up on your list. Outside of that, the suspension is straightforward. And finally, the exterior. The big one is the white paint. Specifically white diamond pearl. Honda issued warranty extensions for peeling paint on affected vehicles, and many were repainted, but many were not. Look closely at roof edges, tailgate, and around the rear glass. These are everywhere with flaking paint in this color. If you're buying at night, you might miss it, and those warranty extensions have expired, so if it's peeling, that repair will be on you.
Okay, the heater was going, but oh no, that's not what I want to do. There's another Honda Pilot. In the Honda Pilot 2013, and we finally have a proper V6 engine again. Out of all the small engines on this channel, right off the bat, I love the big screen. The backup camera is something that is necessary on cars like this. This feels like a body-on-frame SUV, but this is a unibody construction. Compared to the 2012 Toyota Highlander, this feels more like a truck than the Highlander does, which honestly I personally like. Maybe a lot of people may not like that truck-like feeling. It's kind of like in the middle, but it leans more towards feeling like a truck or SUV. Maybe not a truck, but SUV would be the proper term. Okay, we're gonna get on the highway here. So this V6 doesn't lack torque, but we have some vibration going on here. I reckon engine mounts, because I know it's really common with these. The V6 feels really good. It's very silky smooth, just as you would expect from a V6. This J35 3.5 V6 is a very solid engine. You know, the V6 is proper for a vehicle this size. I know newer cars have smaller engines because of all the regulations, but I do like the feeling of the V6 much more than the small motors that they've been offering in newer vehicles. So we got 141,000 miles, and right off the bat, I kind of feel like this needs new shocks. I don't know exactly what the ride new was supposed to be like for this, but it's not bad though. You know, after 140,000, you're gonna, especially for a larger vehicle, you're gonna want to have to replace the shocks anyways. That's gonna be kind of normal for larger vehicles of this age, but it sure beats a new car payment, I'll tell you that. Road noise is more, again, on the level of Honda. Actually, it's not very different than the Highlander. You know, I think the bigger vehicles, it's just harder to dampen a lot of that road noise with such a large cabin. Yeah, this is easy to get used to driving. It's really simple. It's got a lot of highway passing power. Oh, it's got some torque steer. If you drive a smaller car and you jump into a truck, it takes you a while to adjust and get comfortable with where the vehicle is in the lane. This one feels like that. The hood is really high, so it takes you a little while to kind of get comfortable with where the vehicle is in the lane. And I think that's another reason why it feels like a truck. Not necessarily because the ride, but the hood really adds to that feeling as well. Yeah, this is real smooth. I mean, there isn't too much to say about this. This one is just a very proper, comfortable family vehicle. Yeah, I'm pretty sure this one needs engine mounts. This one has a nice little bang when you get on the gas pedal. I'm not gonna push it too hard, but yeah, you see that? That's an engine mount. Original, aftermarket, doesn't matter. None of them really last very long at all. It's just really common with these. I've sold the aftermarket ones and they work for what they are. There were some complaints of a whining noise for some of them, but when you factor in $500 versus $50 for an engine mount, everything changes. And the fact that your $500 engine mount, while it is original, it still doesn't last that long. Design is primarily the reason for this. It's a little painful to have to spend money like that on the car. This one doesn't have any lane keep assist or anything. The amount of visibility here is incredible. I love this. And so that makes the Honda Pilot. Great vehicle. Love the proper V6 that it has and lots of space. You know, this is a good, reliable vehicle, and especially at the price cost, that's the best part about it, is the price.
The second generation Honda Pilot is well over 10 years old now, and yes, it's a Honda with some un-Honda-like tendencies, but that doesn't mean it can't last. It just means you need to understand it before you buy it. The summary on this one is pretty simple. Address the engine mounts, change the compliance bushings, and disable VCM if you want long-term peace of mind. Everything else is just the other stuff. Wear items, ownership realities. This 8-seater SUV is the kind families bought, loaded up with kids, a dog, and a Costco cart full of groceries, and just kept driving for 12 years straight. Owners don't usually gush about it online. They don't romanticize it. They say things like, it just works, it's dependable, it's a tank. And honestly, that's all accurate. The 3.5 V6 is smooth and proven. It's not exciting, but it's strong. And the transmission is a traditional automatic that responds well to fluid changes. But here's the important part for used buyers. After 100,000 miles, this is no longer just a gas and go vehicle. It's a maintained vehicle. Suspension components wear and bushings age, but none of this stuff is catastrophic or structurally flawed. The Pilot doesn't punish you for existing, but it does demand that you participate. If you maintain it, it will usually return to favor with years of service. It's not a flashy SUV, but it's one that you buy when life gets serious. When you see one today with 170,000 miles on it, you're not looking at a worn-out SUV. You're looking at a vehicle that's already proved itself. The weak points are known and the recalls are done. If it's still running well at this mileage, it's probably not a ticking time bomb. A used second-generation Pilot isn't exciting. but it's predictable, and for a family SUV, predictable is a very good thing.
And so that makes the second generation Honda Pilot. The engine's gonna get a 6.5. We all know the J series is a phenomenal engine, but you gotta jump through some hoops to make this one run right, which is frustrating. If you don't, you will have lots of problems with oil consumption and the spark plugs getting fouled up, and it can actually cause serious problems down if you continue driving it like that. Also, the engine mounts are another frustration point. They're a cool engineering concept, but the design just didn't work. They break way too easily, they break way too often. Even the one that I had for the day had a broken engine mount. And I bet you that there are plenty of Pilot owners watching this with broken engine mounts laughing right now, knowing that this is a reoccurring problem over and over again, and people just get tired of dealing with them. But the core engine is good. I use 6.5 score as just an advisory. I give good engines that score just for people to say why. Why does it have that score? Well, that's why it has that score. It's a good engine, but it comes with some frustration that are easily resolved. So 6.5. The transmission is going to get an 8. It is sensitive to fluid changes, and there was a technical service bulletin for a software update, but they're not unreliable. In fact, if they start acting up, drain and fill the fluid 3 times per the manual, and usually it fixes it over time. They're pretty bulletproof actually. They don't fail for no reason. Solid transmissions, I'm giving it an 8. Suspension's gonna get a 7. It's just normal wear and tear stuff. It just gets knocked down a little bit. The compliance bushings are very well known, but they're also a wear item. So just something to keep in mind. Nothing that's gonna completely financially ruin you, but just some things to keep in mind. I'm giving the suspension a 7. DIY and repair costs is something you wanna pay attention to here. Besides having to repeatedly replace the engine mounts, which help to lower this score, there's ways around it. You can use aftermarket ones if you want and not have to pay the 500 something, whatever Honda wants for the originals per engine mount. But a used engine is a little bit pricey for these. We're looking at the high $1,500 to $2,500 range on average, more or less. I was hoping to see something around $1,000 range, maybe $700 to $1,500, but they're on the little higher end for the type of vehicle. I don't know if it's a lack of supply, if people are replacing them because of problems related to VCM. I don't know what it is, but that's an advisory. The transmission, however, is very, very cheap. $300, $299, $400, $600. So should you have a transmission problem, whether it's all-wheel drive or front-wheel drive, it doesn't matter. They're both cheap. No big deal. You can find a used one. The transmissions don't have known problems. No worries. But engines you got to watch out for. Delete your VCM and stay on top of your maintenance. Interior is going to get an 8.5. Interior is solid, actually. Door lock actuators, that's a common Honda problem. The only other thing I see is the HVAC blend door motors clicking, which is typical, not unique to Honda. It is somewhat discussed amongst owner groups, not unique to Honda at all. I won't knock them too much on that. The rest of the interior is durable. There isn't any major problems with it. 8.5. The exterior is getting a 6.5. This is a nice score. Maybe I should have given it a 6. But I'm being nice today because it's only one color, but it's bad with the one color. I mean, even before doing this video or doing any research, I was fully aware of that. I see them everywhere around town with the paint peeling off, especially on the rear tailgate. It's so well known. I know some of them were repainted and fixed, but obviously it wasn't enough of them, so. But outside of that, the other colors are fine. It is regular wear and tear. Darker colors will fade faster. That's normal, but nothing crazy. But the white ones, the paint just sucked. It gets a 6.5. And so that totals up the score and brings it to a solid 7. Great vehicle with some things on the need to know list. Hey, thanks for checking this video out. I really appreciate it. There are a lot more videos coming. Make sure to leave any comments down below. And if you want to see more videos like this, make sure to subscribe. I'll see you in the next video.